Hello, my name is Precious Eze. I'm a certified Microsoft Power Platform and Workflow Automation Specialist. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my honest experience in preparing for and passing the PL-900 certification. So if you're thinking of writing this exam, or you've just started studying but you're not sure what to expect, then this video is for you. I'm going to be walking you through what worked well for me, the exact steps that I use, the resources I referred to, what I wish I knew earlier, and how hands-on experience made all the difference. I'm also going to share some details regarding the exam format. So if you're thinking of writing this exam from home like I did, I'm going to provide some tips. I'm also going to provide some key advice that will make you feel confident heading to the exam hall.
All right, so let's get started. So I'm at the official Microsoft Learn site for the PL-900 certification. Now, the PL-900 certification essentially tests your understanding on how to apply Power Platform tools in a business context. So in the exam, you are going to be presented with a business scenario, and the question rather is going to test your knowledge on how to use a Power Platform tools, a combination of the tools, or a combination of Power Platform processes to address that problem. So it's not just about the theoretical understanding of how to use this tool, but rather the practical knowledge on how they can be used to address challenges in a business context. So when I was studying for this exam, I only use the resources in this site, and there's a reason for that, because this site is always updated with the latest changes to the exam. All the information you need to pass the exam is actually available in this site. Additionally, the resources in this site are free of charge, and that's what makes this site actually great. It provides you all the resources you need to pass this certification at no single cost. So I want to encourage you to come to this section, for instance, that says prepare for the exam. So here you're going to find all the modules in the certification. So the different parts of or sections of the certification, for instance, describing the business value of Microsoft Power Platform, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Pages, Dataverse. So you want to click on either of them. So I could click on where it says Introduction to the course, and here you see the overview as well as all the modules. So I highly encourage you, if you're actually preparing for this exam, you want to actually come to this course syllabus, go into each module, start from the beginning, and complete all the units in the module. At the end of each module, you're going to see a short quiz, and I want to encourage you to take the quiz. So completing this module will give you a good foundation to actually, start solving the questions. Now, the key point I want to make that was the game changer for me in this certification. Before taking this course modules or going through these course modules, I want to encourage you, if you don't have practical or hands-on experience with the Power Platform tools, if you don't know how to use Power Apps, or you haven't the Power Platform tools, if you don't know how to use Power Apps, or you haven't used Power Apps, or your knowledge on using Power Apps is kind of limited, I highly encourage you to have a decent hands-on experience on how to use Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. That makes the difference when it comes to passing the certification. Now, the reason why you want to use these tools is because most of the questions you're going to be seeing in these modules, are actually centered on, practical experience. So if you don't have practical experience in using these tools, you're going to see that some of the concepts being taught is going to sound abstract to you. So for instance, they could be talking about, how to build a relationship in Microsoft Dataverse, a one-to-many relationship, a many-to-one relationship, and all this relationship. And if you don't know how to actually create a table in Dataverse and use this relationship, the concept is going to sound so abstract to you. I had that problem when I was first preparing for this exam. Some of the concepts being taught didn't make a lot of sense to me. So another example, they could be talking about, creating a gallery, to display a product for customers in Canvas app. So if you actually haven't created a gallery, you will struggle to understand that concept. So please, before going through this section or these modules, I highly encourage you to go to Microsoft. So Microsoft essentially has a platform where you can actually do a free trial. So if you come to this site, you could choose either Power BI, Power Apps, and any of the Power Platform tools, and actually sign up for a free trial. If you already have hands-on experience with the Power Platform tool, then you're good to go. If you have access to the Power Platform environment through your organization, then you can also try out creating a Canvas app, a basic Canvas app, a Dataverse table in your sandbox environment. Now, the other key point I want to make is that when you are studying for this exam, you want to focus on Microsoft Power Platform, Power Automate, and understanding Dataverse. Now, the reason is because more than 50 to 60%, between 50 to 60% of the questions that you're going to see in the exam comes from either Power Apps, Power Automate, or understanding, the business value of Dataverse. So if you understand these three areas very well, you have a great chance of actually passing the exam. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't focus on Power Pages and Power Automate and Power Pages and Power BI. However, these three sections or areas are going to give you, a great advantage because most of the questions comes from these three sections. So the other area I want to talk about is the practice exam. So before going through the course modules, I highly encourage you to first of all come to the practice exam. This was what I did. Attempt all the questions in the practice exam at a go so that you can actually see your areas of strength and weakness. This was the first thing I actually did before writing the certification. So when you attempt all the questions, now the cool thing about the practice assessment is that you can actually go through your attempts and see your areas of strength and weakness. So you can see this has been my attempts for the past 1 year. So the first time I first took this certification, I didn't have hands-on experience with the Power Platform tools. So even if I was going through the modules, I was actually struggling to understand the concept, and that's why you can see that I actually failed, the practice exam. However, this was actually good because if I click on View Results, now you could actually see, your performance by sections. So going through your performance by sections will actually make you see your areas of strengths and weakness and topics that you are actually struggling with. So for instance, going through my performance, I could see that I had a problem understanding Power BI. I didn't understand the foundational components of Power Platform. So this kind of makes me focus on this area more. Additionally, you could also click on Show My Answers, and it shows you each response and provides like some sort of feedback to each question that you feel. This is actually very important. So before going through the course modules, I highly encourage you go take the exams, then go through each questions to actually see the reason why you failed this question. This is actually going to make you understand the nuances in the exam, because there are various nuances in this exam. For instance, I struggle to understand power reports and dashboard in Power BI. Some of the concepts are so similar that you actually have to have a good understanding to grasp the differences. So that is it for the exam. The other key parts after taking the practice exam is I forgot to mention about this rather. When you're before taking the practice exam rather, you want to make sure that you are hitting 80% consistently. So when you take the practice exam and you don't score up to 80%, then I don't think you're actually ready for the exam. So you want to make sure that you're scoring 80% consistently before attempting the exam. So you can see in my last 2 attempts, I had about 82%. I took the exam again and scored 82%. Then I knew that I was ready to actually write the exam. So I highly encourage you to score 80% and above consistently before attempting the practice exam. The next area I want to talk about is the exam sandbox. So this is actually a very tricky part, but I highly encourage you to go through the exam sandbox rather and click, just go through all the questions. Now the exam sandbox actually helps you to understand the format of the questions. So for instance, you can see in the exam you're going to see some questions in a single choice. You're going to see some questions that require you to select multiple choice. For instance, in this case, to select two answers. You're going to see some questions that prompts you to do like a drag and drop, and you're going to also see some questions that lets you do some sort of drag and drop to the answer area. So the different question formats, and the reason why you want to go through the exam sandbox is to familiarize yourself with the question format so you don't get surprised on the exam day, because the questions in the practice exam are actually different. So the format of the questions in the practice exam is completely different from the format of the questions you're going to see on the exam day. So familiarizing yourself with the exam sandbox is going to really help you get a grasp of the question format to get you ready for the exam day. So like I mentioned, just bringing everything into perspective, this exam is pretty straightforward. However, hands-on experience makes the difference. You have to get yourself familiar with the Power Platform tools like I mentioned, try out the trial environment, or practice how to build apps consistently in your sandbox. So when I was actually writing the exam, because I have actually built a Canvas app and a model driven app in Power Apps, and I've actually created the tables in Dataverse, whatever question they ask me in this section, I just look at what I've created and imagine what I would have done in that situation, and that made the difference. So hands-on experience, theoretical knowledge is not enough. So additionally, like I mentioned, familiarity with the major tools like Power Apps, Power Automate, and Dataverse makes the difference. So most of the questions, within 50 to 60% of the questions you're going to be seeing in the exam comes from these areas. So you want to be familiar with them. Additionally, practice. Again, this goes down to hands-on experience. So you want to make sure you practice creating basic Canvas app, practice creating our basic Power Automate flows, practice creating Dataverse tables or Power BI if you're familiar with it, just to master the concepts. Additionally, like I mentioned, take the official practice exam and score 80% consistently before scheduling or taking the real exam. Additionally, going through the sandbox will make you familiar with the question format for the exam. Also, all the questions you're going to see in the exam are actually framed in business scenarios. So you're going to be presented a business case to test your understanding on how to use a Power Platform tool, a combination of Power Platform tools, or a combination of business processes to address that question. If possible to set aside time rather to study each specific domain area. So what I also did during my own time is that I just studied Power Apps, got myself very familiar with all the questions in Power Apps, did the same for Power Automate, and did the same for Power BI. It's easier than actually trying to study everything at once. So this is more like a targeted study approach to help you prepare for the certification and actually pass it. Now, this is the last point. If you're taking this exam from home, please ensure that it's very quiet. So I took this exam from home, and when I was taking the exam, I wasn't the only one living at home. I live in a big house. I had people downstairs, and I told them specifically that I'll be writing the exam. However, they were talking downstairs, even if they weren't too loud, but their voice kept distracting me. And the reason why you want to ensure that the house is quiet is because the questions are not straightforward. So you need time to actually digest the information, break down the business scenario, then look at the best approach to it. And that requires being in a very quiet environment. So please make sure if you're in a quiet environment if you're taking this exam from home, or I would encourage you to go to the exam center. The PL-900 certification is not the hardest Microsoft certification out there. However, it's not a walk in the park.
The key is understanding that this is an exam that tests your understanding on the practical application of technology in a business context and not just memorizing concepts and definition. If you follow the approaches I've outlined in this video, such as ensuring that you have hands-on experience using Power Platform tools and also ensuring that you hit 80% and above in the practice exams, you should be in a great shape to pass this exam. Additionally, if you have any comments or you've written this exam in the past or you're currently planning for this exam and you're having any challenges, please feel free to drop your comments and I'm going to respond. I want us to learn from each other's experience. If you find this video very helpful, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. Over the coming months, I plan to cover other Microsoft certifications and I'm going to be sharing my honest experience on what worked for me, not just some generic advice. Thank you for watching this video and I wish you success in your PL-900 journey.